Well, welcome everyone. Is this working? Welcome everyone to the Rotary Club of Coronado for our weekly Wednesday meeting, March 15th. I want to welcome all of our guests, all of our members, and I just want to start out with saying, please refrain from using the facility's Wi-Fi as it pulls from our tech equipment. So as we always start out with our inspirational invocation and pledge, if you would please rise, and Craig Blakey, if you would like to come up.
Thank you, President Luann, fellow Rotary members, visitors, and guests. My father on a daily basis would admonish my brothers and me as we went to school with the following words: remember who you are and what you represent. So when I was asked to give this invocation, I thought about those words, and I realized that today, somewhere on the continent of Asia, where most Rotarians actually reside, there's an invocation being given by either a Buddhist, a Sikh, I should say, a Muslim, or a Hindu. And in Israel and 35,000 other Rotary clubs, invocations are also being given. So that made me wonder what would be an inclusive invocation. So regardless of whether you believe in one God, many deities, or none at all, there's a rhetorical oath which I believe answers my question. You all know it. It's on the banner here to my left. Please let the communal nature of Rotary membership be our invocation. Let's have our daily behavior be fair, kind, and beneficial to all those we encounter. And let our actions bring goodwill, not acrimony. Let us remember who we are and what we represent. Now for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Craig. Okay, next for visiting Rotarians and guests, if we have past President Dan Orr, come on up.
Okay. No visiting Rotarians got by me today unless you snuck by me unannounced. So in that case, we'll go directly to guests of Rotarians. Who has guests? I've got millions of them. Ivan.
On behalf of President Luann, fellow Rotarians, I want to introduce Andrew Gabe, G-A-B-E. He is here today as our guest. He's checking us out, okay? And his eyes started to glaze over when I got to talking to him about the foundation. So you can just say, all right, anyway.
I might have made a mistake by giving Ivan to him.
Okay.
President Luann and fellow Rotarians, I would like to announce my special guest, Brenda Jones.
Thanks.
Looks like Virginia.
Yes, I'd like to introduce my special guest, Joy Molinar.
President Luann and fellow Rotarians, I'd like to introduce my special guest, Peggy Quast, my mother, who came here on spring break to get a suntan and not working out so well.
Put a fork in us. We're done. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then Red Badgers, as we always do, if you please stand up and introduce yourself. It's Jerry Brown. There's Jerry right there. Joe Malloy. He's not here. Okay. Mike Johnson. I saw Mike somewhere. There is right there. Sarah Shevington. Right there. And then Arlene Inch. And today is Arlene's birthday. So happy birthday, Arlene. Okay, and I always ask also if there is anybody. Oh, I didn't say. Oh, that's right. Carrie Siegenthaler. And, of course, Sully was with her. So, yep, welcome. If there's anybody on Zoom, a guest or a special guest, if they would like to unmute themselves. So I think we're good. Okay, next, the announcement slide. So we'll start out with the board meeting. The board meeting is Tuesday, March 21st. District Training Assembly, that is Saturday, March 24th. I can say if you are going to be on the upcoming board, make sure that you sign up for this. It's free. It's at the Liberty Station Convention Center. I think it's like Saturday morning, starts at like 8:30 in the morning. So this is a good thing too, if you're new in Rotary, to go, and it tells you a lot about Rotary, the district. And like I said, it's free. So if you want to sign up, you go to the district website, which is district5340.org. Next, the golf tournament is Friday, March 31st. Feed the Needy is Wednesday, April 12th. If you're interested in doing that, please see Bob or Mary Griffin. April Social, that is coming up Thursday, April 13th at Carol McCullen's house. And I want to thank Virginia Bear for this last week's social. It was great. There were probably about 50 people there. And wherever Jamie is, you need to find me $25, because there's nothing worse than the person that did not bring the reusable glass after I've been lecturing this for 8 months and I forgot my glass. So it's going to cost me $25 for that. Then don't forget, April 29th is Rotarians at Work Day, so put that on your calendar. Next, Pat Stark, if you'd like to come up to talk to us about the golf tournament.
Thank you, President Luann. First, the really bad news. Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson canceled. But not to fear, we have Bob Too Tall Rutherford and Ed Not Too Tall Lowline who will be playing. In all seriousness, our golf tournament is on the 31st. And right now, we really need to pull out all stops and get some more players. Last year, they were beating the doors down. This year, not so much. I do want to say thanks to everybody who has stepped up to the plate and been a sponsor, been a donor. Thank you all for your generosity. But what we really need now, in addition to that, is we need you, if you want to play golf, to sign up. And if you know somebody who plays golf, to ask them. And if you don't want to ask them, find me afterwards and I'll ask them. I am not shy about doing that. We do need that. Last, I need a couple of volunteers to show up at 8 o'clock on that Monday morning to help put out signs. Just see me afterwards. Thank you, Madam.
All right, thank you, Pat. Okay, next, don't forget to sign up for the meeting on March 29th at Feast and Fairway. It's something we're trying different in the evening. So you get there at 5, the meeting starts at 5:30, and Tina Friend is going to be our speaker, so we're excited about that. So that'll be fun. The bar will be open, and there'll be, like fingered appetizer type food. So it's something different we're trying. And then last week we sent out the list for the pantry at the Imperial Beach Neighborhood Center. So please get all your items into the 4 different spots where you can drop them off. And that will end on March 27th. So the next thing, if everybody got the Coronado magazine, there was a great military, and I got it in here somewhere, article on Tom Mitchell and Susan. And I'm like, look at this picture of Tom. No offense, Tom, but wow. Okay. The great picture. Yeah. And then also, it was a really good full article on the golf tournament. And it also was a picture on Limbs of Freedom and the IB Pantry. So that was also really good on that magazine. Okay, so next, my favorite thing is inductions. So I'd like for past President Susan Pop to come up. And if we can have Tina Friend, Rena Clancy come on up, Mike Wywoody, and Natalie Bailey. What a group, right?
Look at that picture. Everybody here? Perfect. Thank you. President Luann. That's loud. Members of the board, Rotarians, and guests. Today we are pleased to induct 2 new members into our esteemed Rotary Club of Coronado, Tina Friend and Rena Clancy. Rena is sponsored by Natalie Bailey, and Tina is sponsored by Mike Wywoody. Tina's classification is municipal management, and Rena's is executive leadership. Rotary is a global network of over 1.2 million neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers who see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. Solving real problems takes real commitment and vision. Since 1905, Rotary's People of Action have used their passion, energy, and intelligence to take action on sustainable projects. From literacy and peace to water and health, we're always working to better our world and stay committed till the end. We provide service to others, promote integrity, and advance our world understanding, goodwill, and peace through our fellowship of business, professional, and community leaders. Everyone, please rise and give a warm applause to our newest Rotarians. And we just have a couple more minutes to ask a couple questions. All right, Rena, three words to describe yourself.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you for welcoming me into Rotary. I think the 3 words that describe me are community-minded, collaborative, and compassionate.
Thank you. And Tina?
Likewise, thank you. I'm very thrilled to be wearing this badge today. And the 3 words that describe me are mom. I'm really proud to be a mother. I'm very focused, and I'm very enthusiastic. So those are my 3 words.
Perfect. And just one more thing, just maybe 3 hobbies or interests that you have so that our members have something to talk to you about.
Okay, so my first one is I love getting out. I love being outside. I love running, hiking, biking, anything to get outside. I love it. Second is travel. I love traveling literally anywhere and everywhere, although in the past 3 years I've not traveled much, so I need to rectify that, as I'm sure is true of all of us. And then the third is I have this passion to learn French, and I have not taken that very far, but it's something that I really want to work on, so one of these days.
Well, like many things, Tina and I are aligned with our jobs and with our hobbies. So my 3 things is I really enjoy getting out and about with my family. I have a little boy, and I love being active and outdoors with him. We love to travel and learn new things. And the third is I love to spend any extra time volunteering and being of service.
Thank you so much. And thank you, newest Rotarians.
Okay, thank you, and welcome to Lena and Tina. Yeah. You want to stay? Yeah, you might as well stay. Yeah, you might as well stay up here because with the check and whatever. Okay, so next I'd like to call up Fab Baggio, and he is a member, and he's the CFO of the hospital, and he's going to introduce the new CEO of the hospital.
Thank you, President Luan, fellow Rotarians. I'd like to introduce Scott Evans. He is our new Senior Vice President and Market CEO for Sharp Coronado Hospital. Scott?
Thank you very much. I understand I have like 2 minutes to introduce myself. So, welcome. I was going to say what a beautiful day, but it is a beautiful day anyway. I joined Sharp about 8 years ago, and I was most recently the CEO for Sharp Grossmont Hospital. And then about 4 months ago was made into a market CEO where we are working really more as a region with all of our hospitals so that we're focusing on the strengths of each hospital in the community, and so that's kind of what I'm here to do. I'm a pharmacist by training, and so I have a passion for healthcare, and my whole family, I've said this before, my whole family is medical. My grandmother was a nurse, and my mom was a nurse, and my aunts were nurses, and all my cousins are nurses, and so that's kind of, I grew up kind of going to the hospital in the old days. So very exciting. I'm really excited. I'm so impressed with the size of the meeting. So, I've been out in East County for some time, and maybe we'll have like 2 or 3 tables of people. So it's just so impressive to see such a great group, and I just am happy to be here. So that's it about me. Yeah.
So now I have Mike Wywoody, who is going to talk about the impact check that we give to the hospital.
Our impact grant is based on the fact that the city doubles what we give under this program. So 8 years ago, the club committed to $100,000 over a 10-year period of time. So this meeting, we're giving our 8th contribution for $12,500. So here we go.
I'm going to go back out here and you can take a picture of it.
Like this is too big to fit in the ATM. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. You're going to deposit that?
Yeah.
I am. So we have one more guest to introduce today, Dr. Greg Appel. He is our Emergency Department Medical Director, and he's going to talk to us today about what to look for in terms of stroke or cardiac events. So, Dr. Appel?
Sir. Good afternoon, everybody. As I scan the crowd here, I think I've personally taken care of about 60% of the room in some way, shape, or form, but we won't name names pursuant to some HIPAA laws, but if you want me to tell you your personal or somebody's personal story, just see me afterwards in about $20 or so. But no, as Faden mentioned, I am the medical director over there at the emergency room. I take that role very seriously, and I feel very lucky to be in charge of such a great group of... Hold the mic up. You got it. How about that? Perfect. Better. I usually have a loud voice, but if I start making your ears bleed, just let me know. We have a wonderful team. I mean, I came on to Coronado in 2018, and since that point, let's say, for example, this last year, we saw more patients at Sharp Coronado Emergency Room than the entire history of the hospital from when it was founded. And in fact, we've seen higher acuity, higher volume, just a higher mass of folks throughout the entire system. Despite only having 8 beds, we see more patients per bed than most hospitals in the entire country. And we're extraordinarily excited, as I'm sure most of you are very well aware of, our campaign for renovating and expanding our emergency room, which coincidentally enough started today in construction phase. It's been a little delayed, as those folks in construction can probably attest to, but at the same time, we're very excited for that to happen. So I've been tasked here today, outside of just giving a general background of Coronado's emergency room, to talk to you about strokes and heart attacks. And I have about 5 minutes, I believe, so we'll try to keep it abbreviated, since I can probably talk about this for 3.5 hours and get into some very complex pathophysiology, which will bore the bejesus out of you, but are still somewhat interesting to me as I continue to remain quite a nerd about medicine. So let's start with strokes. All right. You know, there are certain factors and facets and signs and symptoms that you should always entertain if you or one of your loved ones starts experiencing this. You know, we always have this mnemonic of be fast. You know, I'm going to break that down, not necessarily by letter, but just by symptom, okay? One of the most common manifestations of an acute stroke, meaning a stroke that really needs intervention as quickly as possible, is unilateral weakness. Unilateral weakness is one side of your body as opposed to bilateral weakness, which is both sides of your body, becoming weak, numb, or tingly. So if you wake up in the morning, you're having your daily breakfast, and you decide to reach for your sandwich or scone or whatever you're eating, and you notice your left hand isn't functioning as normally as it did last night, that should be concerning to you. All right. Other aspects, speech difficulties. So folks, if you're otherwise quite eloquent, which from hearing most of your speakers are, I imagine all of you are very eloquent and verbose and loquacious and whatever synonym you want to use. If you find yourself having difficulty finding the right word, expressing that word, like you've had a couple too many Mai Tais and now you're slurred speech, but it's 9 a.m. in the morning, you may not have had as many Mai Tais yet, that should be concerning as well. And then balance issues. This is one of the biggest ones that people tend to forget. If you're walking around, and I think it's very appropriate that we're in a yacht club right now, but if you feel you're on a boat, or if you feel like a drunken sailor and you can't figure out why, that in and of itself can be an isolated symptom of a stroke called a posterior stroke, which are actually one of the most difficult strokes for even physicians to recognize, because it's such an atypical presentation compared to the normal stroke patterns like slurred speech, weakness in the body, numbness, tingling, etc. One of the other aspects that people tend to ignore are visual changes. And we're not talking just blurry vision, we're talking double vision, we're talking spots in the visual fields. If you're looking ahead and all of a sudden you're missing one part of the 4 parts of your pie of visual fields and you're saying, man, I really can't see up to the right, that's also very concerning. These are the big ones in the sense of really concerning signs or symptoms, all right? Some of these can manifest with a confusional state, where if somebody said to you, man, oh man, Mike, John, Jane, Joe, you really seem a little confused today and you don't already have dementia, so what's going on? And so if that's the case and you find a loved one who really just isn't acting themselves, that could be another acute concern. So I know those are a lot of symptoms, all right? But the biggest important point I want to relay to you is that if you can remember any of these symptoms and combine it with the fact that there's a old adage in medicine about stroke care, and that's time is brain, the faster you get evaluated by a physician, the faster you get a CAT scan, the faster you get your whole workup done, the markedly increased chance that you're going to come out of this without any permanent neurologic deficits. If you sit on it and say to yourselves, oh, it's 9 o'clock at night, I'll see how I feel in the morning, most of the things that we can actually do about strokes, if you wait till the morning, we are physically unable to do so because there is a very discrete time frame that we're able to provide these therapies, either a blood clot busting medication we administer through an IV, or one of our wonderful neuroradiologists at Sharp Grossmont, who we have an intimate relationship with at Coronado, to go up there and actually pass a catheter up into the vessels in your brain and take out that clot that's causing that stroke. But if you sit on it, both of those avenues are going to be unavailable to you, and whatever neurologic deficits you had at the time you present to our ED are likely going to stay there for the rest of your life. And so we all enjoy being ambulatory and free to enjoy the things we like to do on a daily basis. So I highly encourage folks to always err on the side of caution. I don't care if it's the most mild of stroke symptoms. No provider will ever fault you for coming into the emergency room. I assure you, I see many more less serious complaints on a regular basis, including stubbed toes and broken nails. So if people are willing to come into the emergency room for that, please, for your sake, for your family's sake, and for the community's sake, please recognize these stroke symptoms and act on them as quick as you can. And I know Jason's going to come up here and talk about 911 related things, but please do not hesitate. Our Coronado Fire Department is massively amazing. They will be at your house in minutes, and they will briskly bring you over to see me or one of my colleagues, and we will take great care of you, as Coronado is in fact a stroke receiving center. So if you are experiencing stroke symptoms, they'll bring you right to Coronado. A lot of people are not aware of that. Coronado Hospital has transformed from a sleepy little hospital that a lot of people didn't even know about to a very busy, very high acuity, very well-staffed hospital. I'm personally involved with hiring each and every one of our ED physicians, and I can tell you they're absolutely fantastic, and I'm not even biased. They all come from Hopkins, Harvard, Stanford, Northwestern, Carnegie, everywhere. They're wonderful physicians. So I'm waiting for somebody to take a cane to me and pull me off the stage here, but until that point, I'm going to talk about heart attacks. 2 minutes for heart attacks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Go heart attacks next.
And I think what we'll do is invite Dr. Appel back at another time to go into it a little bit more. So it's my pleasure next to introduce our new fire chief, Jason Summer, and we're all excited to have him in that role.
All right, I've set a timer here, and Dr. Apel, thank you so much. We have such a great relationship together. The fire department and the hospital work so closely together, and it's just, it's wonderful. And this started from a conversation that I had with Luann. We were chatting about just what fire departments do and what paramedics are and EMTs. And one of the things that I always come across is that people don't know the difference between an EMT and a paramedic. And that's important to know, and I'll explain why, but an EMT is basic life support trained. So EMTs can administer oxygen, and they can render first aid for bleeding and CPR, and they are trained on 911 calls to bring people to the closest emergency room. Paramedics have a much higher level of training, and they carry EKG monitors. They can do 12 leads and diagnose cardiac events in the field. And then they can also administer advanced life support medications. So Dr. Apel is going to talk about heart attacks. One of the things that paramedics can do is they can slow a heart attack down, sometimes even slow it down so that we can get them to the appropriate facility for a cath lab. And that's all done in the living room. And the reason why that's important is because, and he said one thing, they were the busiest they ever were last year. So I'm going to ask all of you right now, how many patients are in their ER right now? It's impossible to know, but we know. We always know how many patients are in every bed at every emergency room in San Diego County. So when we're in your living room and we're diagnosing something and we realize you're having a stroke or you're having a heart attack, one of the things that one of the crew members is doing is looking for a bed right away. So that way, we can take you to either the closest ER, if they're open, but if they're not, we can take you to the next closest ER that has an availability and a doctor's staff waiting to treat you immediately. So it's really important to access 911 as soon as possible. That's what we're here for. And another thing that I just wanted to mention was that, you know, with our paramedics, I like to brag and say we're the best paramedics in the county, and I'll put them up against any other ambulance provider in the county because they really, really love what they do and they know what they're doing. And they're so good at working out in the field and figuring out what's going on with patients and making the right decisions for people. And one of the common denominators that I've been coming across of, and that's what really prompted me to come here today, is this: oh, we didn't want to bother the fire department. Why did you wait 2 days? And now they're really having a really bad heart attack, or it's even now turned into a CPR. Why did you wait to call us? Well, she didn't want to bother you. Or we just figured it'd be quicker to drive them to the emergency room ourselves. And that's what I want to get away from, because that's what we're here for. We're here to serve you. We're here to respond to you. And we're here to bring parts of the emergency room to your living room so that we can start that care right away, get on the phone with the doctors, and start figuring out what we're going to do as a plan. So that was my message for today. So use us, please. And I will tell you, in 15 days, 100% of our department will be paramedics. So that's a really neat thing and something that I'm very proud of. So everybody that you get on scene is a paramedic and is ready to go to work right away. So, and that's all.
Okay, thank you, Jason. We're a little early, so one of the things that I'm going to talk about, especially since Tina's here and Jason is here, if you remember when we were at the Dell, I guess it was September, we had, I think, 2 detectives from the police department that talked about what do you do with an active shooter. And along with them came Jason to talk about the bleed-out kits. And after seeing the bleed-out kits, Jason was nice enough to say, okay, I'll train anybody, anytime on that kit. So then we decided, you know what, this is something that the community needs to do. And shame on us if we don't. So we've been working with the hospital with FOD and with Tina and with Jason with the fire department and with the police department. And so we have gotten probably 13 of our medical people that will train on the bleed out kit, and in that will also be chest compressions and will be AED training. And this, then we will go out and train the entire community, because this is something that if anything should ever happen, there is no reason why all of us cannot be trained in our entire community to help ourselves, to help our families, to help our neighbors. And then with that, Tina has also asked with Jason and us if we would also promote emergency preparedness. And that, if you have not seen Turkey and so on, we want to look at what the worst scenario could happen in this town and all of us be prepared for this. So this is something that we'll train the Rotarians, and then we'll go out to train the entire community. So you'll be hearing a lot about this, but I really, since FOD is here and Jason and Tina, I want to thank all of them that this is something that I think Rotary can promote for this entire community. So thank you, and next we'll bring up Doug St. Dennis to introduce our speaker. Get rid of all my stuff here.
Thank you, President Luann, fellow Rotarians and guests. it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Andy Friedenberg. Many of you here already know Andy from the Cinema Society of San Diego and also from our own Coronado Island Film Festival, which he helped us launch in 2016 and stayed with us all the way until COVID hit us into 2020. He has been well known in San Diego since the 1980s as the movie guy, the man who knows everything about movies. His energy and his love of movies is contagious, and nobody can introduce a movie like Andy can. I called Andy back in 2012 and said, Andy, can you meet me at Cafe 1134? I really need your advice on something. When he got there, I asked him if he thought Coronado would be right for a film festival. And I got a resounding yes, and I want to be involved. And he was, and oh, what a ride we had. Sometimes bumpy. Chris Grant's here, she'll tell you, but always interesting and always fun. In fact, Mayor Casey Tanaka at one point dubbed Andy an honorary Coronado citizen, which we still are holding you to that. And we got to know Andy's beautiful Beth, the other love of his life. She's here too, sitting right next to him. Of all the things Andy did to help us shape our festival, I think the most amazing was bringing his good friend to us, the legendary movie critic and film historian Leonard Maltin, with his wonderful wife, Alice. Leonard is another guy whose love and knowledge of movies and those who make them is staggering. We're indebted to you forever for Leonard and Alice, Andy. This is Andy's book. He's going to talk about it today. It's called Celebrity War Stories, Confessions of a Movie Studio Publicist. It's a fun read with lots of pictures of celebrities, and pictures of Andy with hair on his face and on his head. You can get it on Amazon. I think it's 15 or 16 bucks. And he's going to talk about it. I just want to read a couple of things from it. The first is, first page, Praise for Celebrity War Stories by legendary film critic and film historian Leonard Maltin. Quote, Andrew Friedenberg takes us back to a time when an ambitious young guy with imagination could find a place for himself in the thick of the movie business. I had fun reading about his adventures in movie promotion. The next is his dedication. For my love, Beth, you have been the life balance I have dreamt of since diving into this surreal, unbalanced world, making this very happy man complete. Andrew Friedenberg, February 2021. And so I want to introduce you to this honorary Coronado citizen, Andy Friedenberg.
When I grow up, I want to be Doug St. Dennis. She is truly the poster child for living life to its fullest. And I'm proud to call her my friend, and I am very grateful that she invited me to be part of the team to launch her vision for Coronado Island Film Festival. I have many wonderful thoughts, two in particular, at that time, for that time. First off, I got to work with some amazing people from this community, amazing, some of which are here today. They were so nice and making me an honorary Coronado, and I'll never forget that. I take that very seriously. The other is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to create a film festival from the ground up. Yes, it was Doug's vision, but we had no rules. We had no regulations. We had no precedent. We had no guru up there saying, you can't do that. or you can do that. I'll allow you to do that. We gathered together in unison to create a world-class event for a world-class community. And I'll never forget the day it was born. I was so excited, as were all of us, to see our work come to fruition, and I got to see our child grow for the first 4 years. And I congratulate the festival for carrying on with our child, who's growing up and continuing on the foundation that we started. Of course, everything stopped when the pandemic hit, and that included my involvement with the festival, and my involvement with the Cinema Society of San Diego, which I started in 1983. It's a cultural arts organization that premieres films on a monthly basis. You subscribe, like the Opera Symphony. That stopped, but I must say that this fall, we not only were back in action, but we'll celebrate our 40th season as the longest-running cinema organization in San Diego County. And also what stopped were the arts tours that that Beth and I put together, she's a travel agent, put together for arts lovers around the world. All of that stopped, and about halfway through the pandemic, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who's in the industry, film industry, living in Santa Monica, and he said, Andy, I've been thinking about you and Beth. I said, why's that? He said, because they say that the 3 worst businesses you can be in during the pandemic are movies, travel, and restaurants. And Andy, you got 2 out of 3. I said, well, thank you. Thank you so much. So I wrote this book called, as Doug said, called Celebrity War Stories, Confessions of a Movie Studio Publicist. And basically, it was about my experiences as a regional marketing director from 1978 to 1983, working for United Artists, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Columbia Pictures as a regional marketing director, first based in Denver for the Rocky Mountain region, then got promoted to Dallas for the Southwest region, and then promoted to Chicago for the Midwest region. Well, why write a book? Well, to be honest with you, writing a book was not on my radar screen. I had no interest or no thoughts about writing a book, but a couple things prompted me to do so. First, I had a lot of time on my hands. And second of all, Beth and I, right before the pandemic, were on a cruise ship, and we were having dinner in the dining room, and we were sitting there by ourselves, having a lovely dinner, when a man walked up to me, up to us, and looked down at me and said, "Is it true?" I said, "Is what true?" He said, "You worked for a film studio?" I said, "Yes, I've worked for film studios." "Did you ever work with celebrities?" "Yes, I worked with a lot of celebrities." "Do you have any stories?" "Yeah, I have a lot of stories." "Well, can I hear them?" I said, "You want to hear my stories?" He goes, "Yeah, if you don't mind." I said, "Okay." And just as I said, "Okay," the entire dining room section where we were at pulled their chairs to my table. And I thought to myself, maybe I've got something here. So during the pandemic, now I have a friend whose daughter published her first, wrote her first novel. It took her 5 years to write her book. This took me 8 days. 8 days, because it just flowed. I knew it all, I lived it all, but it took me about 6 months to edit it, collecting I saved everything from those days, and it took about 6 months with grammar and punctuation and the photos and what have you. And then I called, as you heard about Leonard Maltin, I called my dear friend Leonard, and I said, "Leonard, I've got this book, who should I go to publish it?" And he said, "Self-publish it on Amazon." I said, "Okay." So I went through Amazon, it got published, and about a month later, my phone rang. And a woman on the other end said, "Is this Andy?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I'm calling you from Fort Lauderdale, Florida." I said, "Oh, I went to high school in Fort Lauderdale." "Hi." She said, "I heard about your book." I said, "Okay." She said, "How would you like to lecture on your book on cruise ships?" I said, "I'm your guy." The next thing you know, Beth and I are traveling the world talking movies. We did, last summer, we were all around Ireland. Last December, I was talking about my book to 200 passengers and a lot of penguins in Antarctica. Next month, we go Fort Lauderdale to Amsterdam. In 2 months, we're on the Queen Mary 2 from New York to London. And in September, we're doing round-trip Athens, including Israel, Egypt, and Turkey. So it's a great gig. Whenever I'm at dinner and somebody sits next to me and we start talking, I tell them, "Oh, I'm the guest lecturer on the ship." To which they always say, "You mean you work on this ship?" I'm like, "No, I don't work on this ship. This isn't work. I talk movies." That's really great. But I want to tell you an experience that I had, that Beth and I had on a ship. It was on a celebrity ship, one of their 3 new $2.2 billion ships. This was called the Apex, also the Edge, and the Beyond. Has anybody been on any of those ships? They are, just to see a $2.2 billion ship is worth your time. Anyways, this was to the Caribbean. And what it was to 1 week to the Eastern Caribbean. But what cruise ships like to do, if you're a lecturer, is they say, "Well, could you do 2 back-to-back?" Because they don't want to fly someone in, fly back, and fly again, fly. So they say, "Would you like to stay and do back-to-back?" I'm like, "Sure, I'm your guy. Yeah, that's great." So 1 week was the Eastern Caribbean. The next week was the Western Caribbean. So the first week, they put us in a gorgeous cabin on the 7th floor with an infinity balcony, which is fantastic. Beautiful cabin on the 7th floor. And they put my lectures in the main theater, where the singers and dancers perform, with a huge curved screen. It was gorgeous. And they put my lectures on the days at sea at the best time you can have a talk. Do you know what time that is? 11 a.m. And you know why? Because the buffet opens at 12. So that is the ideal time for a talk. And it was going well. Until the end of the first week, we got a note in our cabin from the cruise director saying, "Mr. Friedenberg, we want to let you know that for the second week, we are going to have a second lecture on board. And we want to let you know that we're moving your cabin from the 7th floor to the 3rd floor, where there is no balcony. It's just a window. And we are moving your talk from the main theater to a nightclub. And we're moving your talk from 11 a.m. to 9 a.m. Well, my first thought was, did I do something wrong? And then my second thought was, who the heck is coming? It turned out it was a man named Jim Kennedy. And Jim, for years, ran the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And so he was going to talk about space shuttles and astronauts and things like that. So we made the move, and the second week started. And I gave my first talk at 9 in the morning about my work with Dustin Hoffman and writer-director Robert Benton and their Oscar-winning film, Kramer versus Kramer. And we had about 100 people in the club. And when it was over, they broke out in applause, which was very nice. Broke out in applause. And I said, okay, this is good. And then a gentleman ran over to me at the podium and said, "That was great." I said, "Well, thank you, sir." He goes, No, that was really great." I said, "Thank you so much." He goes, "I'm Jim Kennedy." I really wanted to say, "How's our cabin?" But instead,
I was very diplomatic and said, Beth and I are going to be, my wife and I are going to be hearing you at 11 a.m. in the theater. And he said, okay. So we go there at 11 a.m. and it was packed because it's astronauts and space shuttles. He stood up and said, I am so happy to be on this gorgeous ship, talking about what I love with the Kennedy Space Center and all that. But before I begin, he says, I just want all of you to know that I am not the only lecturer on this ship. I attended Andy's cinema talk this morning, and it was so great you all need to go. Now, wasn't that nice? I thought that was really sweet. I went up to him and I said, I never thought I had a press agent on the ship, but thank you, Jim. He said, I'm going to tell top brass about you. I said, you do that. That would be awesome. Well, do I have time to tell you about one celebrity war story? We okay on time? So, do you remember the actor Charlton Heston? Okay, so I want to tell you Charlton Heston stories as long as I can. So here's one of my war stories. So I was with Columbia Pictures in Dallas when I got a phone call from my boss's boss that we were releasing a Charlton Heston, Brian Keith Western called The Mountain Men. Did anybody see it? Not a very good movie. I was to handle the world premiere, which was going to take place in the southern tip of Colorado, just before the New Mexico border in a community called Walsenburg. Population 5,000, about 30 miles south of Pueblo, Colorado. And the reason why the world premiere was going to take place in Walsenburg is because every year there were a group of people that would gather together in Walsenburg for a period of time to reenact what it was like to be mountaineers in the 1800s. Because the film dealt with mountaineers looking for beaver for their traps and running into Indians, and that's what the film was about. So my job was to work with these mountaineers because we were inviting press from all over the country to come to this, to the mountains, to stay in plush tents and learn about living in the mountains, survival skills, what have you. And then my job also was to set up an outdoor theater for the world premiere Under the Moon and Stars. So I hired a company out of Denver for the world premiere equipment and told them where I wanted it to go. And then I flew in early and met with these mountaineers. And anyways, the big weekend happened, and they flew in from all over the country, these press people. We had very nice tents, a little cool in the mountains, but a very, very nice tents. And we got to learn survival skills and what have you. Anyways, comes the big event. We're sitting around the campfire, and the mountaineers present Mr. Heston and his son Fraser, who wrote the screenplay, Golden Tomahawks, which was very nice. And then it was time to gather up your blankets and belongings and walk a short distance to where I had this outdoor movie theater ready to go with comfortable plush chairs. As they got up and started to walk this little path, the temperature started dropping, and the winds started gusting, and the dust from the ground started whirling. And by the time they got to this beautiful outdoor theater, something happened that none of us had expected. The movie screen ripped in half. And it was at that moment that I remember thinking, what other career should I consider? Because I am history. And upon looking at that broken, ripped screen, Mr. Heston shouted out, Andy, get me the microphone now. Well, who am I to say no to Moses? So I grabbed the microphone, I ran it over to him, he was standing in front of the ripped screen, and then he spoke and said, ladies and gentlemen, I wish I had the rod that I used to part the Red Sea right now. And that was it. Nobody got to see the movie. They all went back and they wrote all about it. It was a huge publicity hit.
to the point where my bosses at Columbia Pictures called to congratulate me on the success of the world premiere that never happened. I mean, this is insanity. And to finish off this wild weekend, it was time, the weekend was over, it was time to take them to the little airport in Pueblo for the once-a-day flight to Denver, and from Denver they switched planes and they were going home to Los Angeles. Well, I make sure in this little airport that the Hessens were comfortable, and all of a sudden on the public address system, the representative for the airline announced that the one flight a day to Denver that day has now been canceled. And it will happen the next day. So that caused, as you can imagine, an outrage. These people on this flight ran up to this poor guy, screaming at him, why is this happening? Where should I stay? And whatever. But actually, for a guy who worries about everything, I was pretty okay about this whole thing, because I went up to the airline representative. I said, excuse me, what is your name? He said, Michael. Michael, I have a guest that was scheduled for that plane, and he'd like to talk to you. He goes, sure, I'm happy to explain it all. I said, oh, sure, follow me. The look on this guy's face, he said, oh my God, that's Charlton Heston. I said, yes, it is. And Mr. Heston, this is Michael from the airline, and he's going to help us get us another plane for you. And Mr. Heston, in his voice, said, thank you, Michael, I appreciate it. And this kid runs back to his dad, to the counter, gets on the phone, and as fast as you could say, let my people go, a plane pulled up to take us to Denver. So that's my Charlton Heston experience. How am I on time? You can do another one. I can do another one. Wow. I thought I had time for just one. Oh, gosh, where should I start? Okay. I'll tell you about Dustin Hoffman. So really, the story of Dustin Hoffman with Kramer versus Kramer in Dallas is really the story of my limousine driver, Jack Hicks, who stood 6'4" tall before he put on his boots and talked like this and was just a sweetheart of a guy. And Jack's claim to fame was he drove a congressman in the motorcade when President Kennedy was assassinated. And so Jack, when I would have a celebrity in town, Jack would take them in his limo, stop his limo right at the spot where President Kennedy was assassinated, and do the whole story. And it was very good. Anyway, so I had Dustin in town with Kramer versus Kramer, and the night the press were seeing the movie, I walked by the restaurant, and there was Dustin and our writer-director, Robert Benton. They were sitting at a table, so I went over to say hello, and Dustin Hoffman said, why don't you join us for dinner? Well, who am I to say no to Rain Man? So we sat down, and Dustin, I've worked with him a few times. He's very absorbed with his characters, but that night, he wanted to know all about Dallas. And I told him that the driver who drove him from the airport to the Fairmont Hotel and I told him about Jack Hicks, and he said, oh, I would love to do that tour. I said, well, it's probably not going to happen because your schedule is so busy. And so he did the print interviews, and then he did the TV and radio interviews. And his last interview was for a TV show called PM Magazine. And it was clear that he and the host of that TV show were not getting along. Something about she didn't have her facts right. Anyways, he had enough, and he said, I'm out of here. And he stormed out of the interview, looked at our driver, and said, Jack, let's get out of here. And he did the tour. He left, and I started praying that, oh my gosh, I hope it goes well, because if not, I'm going to hear about it from my top brass. And when Jack came back with Dustin, Jack said to me, yes, we did the tour, and he asked a lot of questions. So it was time, the weekend ended, it was time to go back to the airport. So I was in a limo with with Robert Benton, and Jack was in the, Dustin was in the limo with Jack. And we get to the airport, and they board the plane, and then Dustin jumps up out of his first class seat and says, "I forgot to say goodbye to Jack." Well, Dustin is about 5'6", and Jack, as I said, was about 6'4". And so Dustin runs off the plane, leaps into the arms of this gentle giant, and Jack turns all red in the face and says, "Mr. Hoffman, I've been a big fan of yours ever since The Godfather." Thank God Dustin laughed and boarded the plane again. I didn't think it was funny at all and said, "Jack, Dustin Hoffman wasn't in The Godfather. That was Al Pacino." And he said, "Well, Andy, I'm so sorry. And we laughed it off. And that was that war story. How are we on time?
We're good. We could do question and answer.
Sure, let's do question and answer.
So if we can get the microphone, does anybody have any questions at all for Andy? I know we're not shy, so.
Can you tell us, if you're comfortable with it, who the most challenging people to work with was? You mean you want the dirt? I don't do dirt. I'm sorry. Whenever I talk on a cruise ship, they say, "Who was really difficult?" I just don't want to go there. It's not in my book. I choose not to. All these people I have respect for, and even though the situations were funky, we got through it, and so I'm sorry.
Who was the most enjoyable?
So I was 23 when I started in the motion picture business. I'm 68 now. And when I was told, for the first world premiere I ever did was a film called Convoy. It was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I was told part of my job was to pick up Ernest Borgnine. Do you remember the actor Ernest Borgnine? He won the Oscar in 1955 for the film Marty. And I met him, and he was excited to be there for Convoy with Chris Christopherson and Ally McGraw. And we went outside to wait for the limousine to pick us up. And I said to him, "Mr. Borgnine, it's a great honor to meet you." And he said, "Ernie, call me Ernie." And I'll never forget that as long as I live here. I'm a 23-year-old nothing, and here is an Oscar winner being so nice. So kind of nice. We have another.
Did you ever hear from Mr. Kennedy's top brass?
Well, I keep going on Celebrity, so I guess that's a good sign. And they write very nice notes about me. The cruise directors and activities director write nice notes that everybody likes Beth and Andy and keep doing it, so that's very nice.
Thank you so much. This is really exciting. I'd love to be at a dinner party with you. What fun. Oh my gosh. What an amazing career and life you've had. It's just so much fun to hear those stories. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So thanks so much, and maybe we'll see you on a cruise ship.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. And if you need a travel agent, here she is. Another question?
Any other questions?
No?
Okay.
Well, then thank you so much for having me. And thank you again, Doug, for inviting me.
Thank you, Andy. So next week we'll be at the Dell, and it will be the new mayor, Paloma Aguirre, sorry about that, got her name, should be doing an update on Imperial Beach. So that will be next week, and that ends this meeting. There you go.